I think what it does is it gives a couple of things. Number one, it gives your kids a clear vision, like a vivid picture of what our program is going to look like. Because they have a clear picture and they understand what it's supposed to look like, then it becomes compelling, where it inspires your players to give their best effort because they want to achieve that vision.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the head boys basketball coach at Dodd City High School, Mike Scarbrough. Coach Scarbrough is in his 31st year as a head coach. He has an overall record of 608 wins and 323 losses. He's taken over 6 programs in his career, has led teams to 23 playoff appearances, 15 district championships, 11 regional tournaments, 4 Final Fours, and 3 state championships. In 2003, Coach Scarbrough was named the Panhandle Sport Hall of Fame Coach of the Year. He was named District 23 1A Coach of the Year in 2022. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Well, man, this is really fun for me because it's been a few years since you and I have crossed paths, but I always appreciated when I was at McKinney High as a varsity assistant. You were at Frisco Centennial. You guys were always hard to play against in district, and we had some great battles. And then, congratulations on 600 wins. And it's just a pleasure to get to talk hoops with you today.
Well, I can remember still vividly that kid hitting the shot at the buzzer in by district that one year.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's been kind of a weird kind of the end of the last 10 years or so, just because, Centennial, my son was getting into high school and he was probably not going to be a 5A athlete, and I wanted to coach him. And so we left and went to Mumford, and he had a good career there, 3 years. It turned out to be a nice little 2A player. And then when COVID hit, my wife and I were just sitting around, and it was like, we don't know anybody here. We don't have family here. We lived in College Station. I was driving one way. She was driving the other way. And we wanted to get back to the North Texas area. So here we are, and it's worked out well, but took a few moves to get back here. But I like it here. I'm going to retire here.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Man, after 33 years, I mean, that's you've definitely fought the good fight, and
it's a good feeling, knowing that you can retire if you want to. But I still like it. I still enjoy it. I still look forward to going to work every day. I don't feel like I sweat the small stuff as much as I used to. And but yeah, I think once I kind of lose that, I still look forward to a new season and a new team and the planning and all that stuff. I still enjoy that. I think there are some things that I used to enjoy. You can kind of tolerate that you don't enjoy as much as you used to. I remember, what was it? Don Meyer said the 3 stages of coaching are passion, duty, and burden. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the duty burden phase,
But I think the passion part does come out because, like you said, that you don't have to do it. So you're really one of the few that are doing it because they want to, and not because, like, for a lot of us, it's, and I don't feel like I'm in this, but a lot of coaches, it's like, this is my paycheck. Like, I don't really have a plan B. And so that burden part can really sink in. But when I think it's just so funny getting to talk to you again, because this is what I remember is a guy that doesn't give himself a lot of credit, even because even back then you were talking like that about yourself and your program. You got but I mean, and then to do it this long, I mean, obviously you've got to still have a passion for it, and it sounds like you do.
I know, like what you said, because I was kind of in a tough stretch about 3 years ago, and I really thought about retiring. I mean, I actually called my TRS representative and, did the whole thing. And then Alex Stevenson called me he was a girls coach here at Dodd City. He called me. He's like, "Are you really going to retire?" I was like, "Man, I'm thinking about it." He's like, "No, you're not." And so I've really landed, been really blessed that I've landed at Dodge City because it is a perfect fit. The kids are perfect. The community is great. Our administration is great. And so I know it's a weird thing to see me happy about anything, but I actually really like my job here. And so, but I'm like you, when I started thinking about other things, I'm like, I never wanted to be anything else. I mean, I wanted to be a coach from the time I was in high school. And it's weird because people ask me, like, who influenced you? When I was a kid, do you know who fascinated me? Tom Landry. When I was a big Cowboys fan, and there was just something about, I would always watch his show, the Tom Landry show came, this is telling you how old I am. Tom Landry show came on before the Cowboys played. Always came on 30 minutes before. And there was just something about him. I would always think, like, man, that guy's sitting in a room full of guys and they're making their game plan and they're, and nice. So I just, it always intrigued me. And I think my high school coach was probably the one that pushed me over the edge. It was like, hey, I think you might be good at this, And so once I got it in my head, I mean, when I went to college, I never thought about changing majors or doing anything else. And here I am 33 years later, looking at myself.
You knew, man. You knew
how much hair I've lost.
I don't know. It's been about 10 years or so since we've kind of been around each other. You're aging well, man. You're doing a good job.
It's not because I work out or eat healthy or anything.
Well, hey, Nick Sakaris, if he watches this episode, he would want to know, and I want to know, are you still running the zone? The zone that just gave us fits when you're at Centennial.
What's crazy is I actually got away from it for the past 2 years, and we've been running the Amoeba.
Okay.
Because I didn't have a big guy. My team was all kind of 6'1", 6'2" guys, and so I didn't feel like I probably could have got away with running it, but it was a good change. It really, I thought it fit us, and it was kind of fun to coach something different. I always tell people, I was like, man, I wish I was kind of known for something cool, like some really spicy offense.
You're known for the point zone that makes you play for a minute of defense at a time or offense at a time, but it's effective, man. I think Nick took
I'm
it.
I'm going back to it next year.
Are you?
Yeah, because for Class A, we've had some pretty good talent, and I think we'll still have a chance to be decent next year. But I've got a big that I don't want, making amoeba slides because he can't keep anybody in front of him. But he can stand in the middle of the zone and let everybody else do their thing. Now, we've been running point zone in the junior high since I've been here because I know it's coming. But it was fun not to run it because I had been running it for so long that I really felt like I was beginning to do a poor job of coaching it because we would get to that segment in practice and probably like you do every season, I start out teaching it like we don't know it, and it was just I would get to that part of the practice, you'd look, you'd be like, oh, geez,
not again,
and then, somebody would want to talk about it. I'm like, God, man, I'll send you the stuff. But it was fun. And Leslie Broadhurst, who's at Canyon Randall, he's the amoeba guru. So I had him come work with my guys like 3 summers ago, and I just spent a lot of time with him. What's funny about Leslie is when I was at Nazareth, I graduated 4 starters off a really good team, and I had the Class A Player of the Year back, and I didn't want to get him in foul trouble. So I toyed with the idea of running the zone. So I called Leslie. I didn't know anything about the amoeba, and I just seen them play, and I knew they were just flying around everywhere. So I called him. I said, can I come watch it? Yeah. So I go watch it. I'm like, that's not for me because I got a big kid. But I said, what was that thing you were doing at the end right there about the last 10 minutes? He said, well, that's called the point zone. And I said, well, show me what you're doing, And so is there a book? Is there a video? He goes, no, he just had some hand scratch notes that he got from somebody. And that's where it started. and we put it in to run as a second defense. And this is, these are kids at Nazareth that have been playing man-to-man for me for 5 or 6 years. And for whatever reason, I can't tell you, they bought into it. And that's kind of where it started. And so fast forward about 5 years after that, Leslie calls me and he's like, "Hey, I need to learn how to run the point zone because we're getting away from the amoeba." I was like, "Well, I learned it from you." So kind of gone back and forth with the point zone and the amoeba the past few years.
Man, 33 years of coaching, over 600 wins. I would imagine you have some daily habits that set you up for success because even though, I don't teach that much here anymore at Faith, I would imagine over those years you were in the classroom a ton. So with the classroom responsibilities and coaching, what habits kind of set you up for success?
I think because I enjoy what I do so much, and really, like right now at Dodd City, man, they take care of me. I'm doing Rosetta Stone Spanish. I can't speak a word of Spanish, but I'm basically, it's like everybody log in, everybody logged in. I have a thing where I can see their computers and they work and I watch film or whatever.
Beautiful.
So it's great, but it hasn't always been like that. So I think, one of the things is because I like what I do so much, I don't feel like I'm working. But I think when I kind of look back over the years, I have a pretty good work ethic because I want, even in the classroom, I want it organized, I want it disciplined and everything. So I think that's one of the things because I enjoy it, I work hard at it. But you have to be good with your time, and when we're in season, out of season, spring, fall, I always make a weekly calendar out. And then, especially when we're in season, I go from that weekly calendar to my daily practice plan. And that's what I do on Sundays. I prepare for the week. And when you have classes, I try to do that on Friday so that I can have the whole weekend to do basketball. But I just think I utilize my time. And then I also learned this from just several coaches when they talk about culture and stuff. And really, I've heard Pat Summitt talking to Don Meyer twice. And Don Meyer was big on this about making informal time for your players. So that is the reason I ended up back in a small school, because I didn't have the relationship in big schools that I did in a small school. I see my players in every hallway, at the changing of every bell. I have lunch duty. I get to visit with them at lunch. They have a 15-minute break. I see all of them at break. I call them into my office. I can stop them in the hall. I can just sit by them in the cafeteria and just have, "Hey, how's it going? How's your day going? What'd you do this weekend? How's things? Just whatever." But I didn't do that when I was younger. And I think as I've gotten older, it's more important. Not that I was ever cool, but I was younger, and you related to kids easier. Now I don't. Kids actually, I think my wife said, they don't see you as a father figure. You're like a grandpa figure. But I think I have to work harder at that every day. When I come to school, and that's something I just try to have that informal time. But I try to stay organized, and I'm an early morning person. I'm a terrible evening person. I'm in bed by 8:30. I get up at 4:30 every morning.
Good for you, man.
And that's when I do my stuff, because nobody's there to bother me. I've always kind of been an early riser. And so that's when I plan my day. And that's really part of coaching that I love, is just getting up, grabbing a cup of coffee, and man, just what's going to happen today, and just getting that planned out. So I don't know if that even answered the question, but
yeah, it did. And then I thought a great nugget that you said about one being organized for the week. I thought of Buzz, Coach Buzz at A&M, like that, being down at that TABC early bird when he was showing us his personal calendar. Now, obviously, you and I don't have the personal assistant that actually puts that together and everything. But there is this idea that in order for us not to waste time throughout the day, we have to have those minutes accounted for and where we're going to be and what we're going to do. And that was the other nugget, was because you're organized, you are able to prioritize that individual time. Because I'm the same way. I'm not at a big school, but it's really easy to only see my guys in basketball and to only talk to them about skill and those in faith basketball related things. But to your point, we have to make time for those. It may seem to be random conversations, but for you, it's, where you're going to be at lunch duty, where these guys are going to be in the hall, and you make a point to do that. I think that's really good.
Isn't it amazing though that you can become a slave to that, and just one thing, because man, I got a test I got to give today, so I got to be at the copy machine at this time and get that done. I got to do this, I got to do that, so that all this stuff is done. And then one thing that out of the ordinary, and I hope I've gotten wiser with age, but when I was younger, man, somebody's like, "Hey, we need to just sit in on an ARD meeting," or
just throw off your schedule.
You got a kid down here in the office. You got to go deal with that. And that stuff would just fly all over me because I'm like, well, now I can't do this, and now I can't. And sometimes that just happens.
Yeah,
And I don't think I let that stuff bother me. But my wife this week, was we had to switch cars. She needed to pick up because she was going to go pick something up, and so I'm leaving. I'm going to get the pickup, and I'm pulling out of the driveway, and she's like, "Hey, we're switching." She's calling me. "We're switching. You remember?" And it's like, I'm gummit, she's ruining my routine, whatever. And I'm like, I catch myself, I'm like, this is like 2 minutes, relax there, big guy. Stop at McDonald's, get you a Egg McMuffin or something.
Relax there, big guy. But what I thought about when you were saying that is practice planning. I think we can be the same way there. We have this plan that goes for 2 hours, and we have it all mapped out to the minute. And if we're not careful, we can fly by opportunities that present themselves within a practice to maybe have a one-on-one, maybe to there's a great culture celebration or deficiency that we can highlight in that moment. But man, if we just, I can't get off top. That's where and personally, and there's a lot of coaches that might frown upon this, but I'm pretty loose with my practice plans now. Part of it is we're pretty simple. We don't do a lot of things. And so it doesn't take a lot of time to cover what we need, but there really aren't a lot of times set to what we got to accomplish, so that I can stay in something longer, or I can shut it off and get out of there. Man, crap, coach, we can stop practice 15 minutes early if we've got everything done, So, when I was with Coach Watson and starting out here, it was a 3-page practice plan that we're not deviating from this, man. It has to stay the same.
I had a couple of things that kind of jogs my memory. But when Danny Henderson was at Marcus, I went to watch him work out in the spring, do some skill stuff. And one of the most exciting things I was excited about was seeing one of his practice plans. Man, I just couldn't wait. So I go in and he hands me the sheet, and I turn around and he's got about 8 things listed. No times, just 8 things listed. And so I kind of look at you guys, hey, we may not get through all of that, man. It's just kind of going to be how it's going today. And before I saw that, because Danny, for when I was a young guy, when he was
Peaster?
Even before that, when he was running the Loyola stuff, I can't remember where he was at. Anyway, I had always been a big admirer of his. So yeah. And up to that point, I was like you, man. We got 5 minutes to do this, and we're going to go for 5 minutes. And it looks terrible, and a couple more minutes might fix it, but no. Or hey, we're doing great. No, we got to go 2 more minutes. Got to get that 2 more minutes in there. And then the other thing that kind of changed my thinking on that was when I was at Canyon, and I coached with Coach Lombard, and about the simplicity thing. Watching him coach basketball is like watching just a master craftsman. Wow. But he had coaches in there all the time, and they would come in. Well, he's doing the same stuff we're doing, And they're right. He wasn't reinventing the wheel, but I would be like, but you're not getting it. Watch how he teaches.
Yeah.
I would always say if he and I did the same drill, exact same drill, I would have my guys, hey, we're going to do this and we got to do this. And I want you focused on this. And man, let's really stress this, And Coach Lombard is going to go, we're going to do this. Go. They would do one thing. They would do it perfectly. And the drill would just flow. And it's just, and I said, I think his genius is just how he keeps things simple.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes too, if you ever think about a scouting report that you ever did, a good one where you walked out of there and you're like, man, we had these guys pegged and we did it. It was probably because of things that you took out and not the things that you added, And I think Joe's the master of just, he knows how to keep it simple, and his girls are reacting. They're not, paralysis by analysis. They're just getting it done. It's perfect to see that. It was exciting for me to get to watch him.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
You've been at 5 schools? Is this 5?
More than that.
More than that. How many?
Let's see. Scarbrough, Nazareth, Canyon, Centennial, Mumford, Dodd City. 6.
Which that's really cool because, culture is a buzzword, but it's just how you show up, what you're about. And I'm always interested to see how when coaches move from place to place, does the culture that they have stay the same, or do they adapt a little bit from kind of where they're at for what those kids need? So over the years, how has culture changed for you?
I think when I was younger and I got my first head job, I didn't know what culture was. I was creating a culture. I just didn't know what it was. And I didn't, when you're young, you go to clinics, you want X's and O's.
Yeah.
And now that I'm older, I want to hear people talk about how they run their program.
Yeah.
But after I kind of figured out what I was doing a little bit, which that took a long time, since I've had 6 different jobs, there are some cultures that I went into that it was like, I'm blowing it up. You just got to change everything. But then there are places where I went into where I was like, I tell you what, the best program that I ever took over, I think, was Frisco Centennial. Russell Miller was there, and he's a good coach, but man, those kids knew how to work.
Yeah.
They knew how to be coached hard, the open gym part and then playing in the summer, and all that stuff was laid out. And I learned from Russell that help the guy taking your job. You kind of just, you get a job and you're like, well, that's this. But that guy helped me with everything. And so I really just kind of, as far as just made it mine with the offense and defense and how I teach skills, I left everything else alone. But I've had jobs before where it's just like, man, these guys are late coming to practice. One of them was the principal's son who just kind of felt like he could walk in at any time. And, guys, just, not coming to practice, not working hard. Hey, we didn't get this. We're going to line up, run a set of lines. They jogged it, you just had to change it. But I also learned that, when I was at Nazareth, man, they demanded excellence. And so I learned pretty quick. I was like, look, man, whatever happens here, I'm going to do this how I want to do it, so that if it doesn't work out, I have no regrets, But I think now I guess I'm comfortable enough with myself when I come in, like the guy whose place I took here, he was a good coach, but it's just like, I'm going to make it mine, and we're going to do things how I want it done. And there are things that they did well that I left alone. And I really wish I think I've heard, that you only got 2 or 3 moves in your career, as a head coach, because it just takes so much energy. And I was stupid enough to do it 6 times. You're
so good. You're so good that you could double that number. That's what it is.
I remember when I thought about taking this job, I was like, man, I don't know if I have it in me again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because it does take a lot. It does take a lot of effort.
You get going and you get excited about it, and that kind of gets you through it.
I think there's a lot of genius and I know you'll probably cringe at that word, like because again, you're a humble guy that doesn't take compliments. I think there's a lot of genius in knowing who you are and how you want things to be done, but also being open to understanding that there are some good things already here that I just don't have to reinvent. Like they've already got this, so why harp on it? Because I imagine like a younger guy that takes over a job, scorch it. Like everything that you've ever done is over. This is how we are now. And possibly if it was a super negative environment or culture before, you have to do that. But like you've taken over jobs. I remember Russell, like they were super organized and good and competitive. So like you're taking over a job where
he was more organized than I was. Russell was insane about organization, man. I mean, like you would walk into the storage room and everything's 2 inches apart and facing the same way. I mean, he was crazy organized.
I think Nick Sakaris had a little bit to do with that too. He was,
Nick probably had a lot to do with that. Yeah. Nick was the guy that, we couldn't leave until all the laundry was done.
Yeah. I would imagine I believe, and I want him to hear this, I believe he's one of the hardest working coaches as far as the time and, staying up there on Saturdays and Sundays and doing things. As far as just loving the grind, he's the guy, man.
He is. He's one of the best assistants I ever had. And he has a very creative offensive mind, but man, I had him and I had Laramie Schmidt. You remember Coach Schmidt?
Yep.
I didn't do anything. Those guys took care of me. They did everything. And it was so nice because you just coached. I mean, I just walked in there and here's the practice plan. Let's go get after it. And, after I think we were together 4 years and, here's what's funny about Nick. Nick hated the point zone. Hated it when he was just hated it.
But now
and then he goes to Anna and it's like, hey man, will you come do a clinic with my guys?
Yep. And I think even at Bras.
Yeah, he does run it a lot.
Yeah, I think he does there too.
He's a big man-to-man guy.
Yeah. So you've been at these different places and you've adjusted the culture, but how does it drive performance in your program?
I think, when I was younger, I always used to say, and I didn't even know I was talking about culture, but, you sold your kids. This is us and this is not us, And I, when I went to the Don Meyer Academy, I got the concept of the notebooks. We have player notebooks. I still do that. And so everything that I feel like is important to our culture, I put in that. And so I think what it does is it gives a couple of things. Number one, it gives your kids a clear vision, like a vivid picture of what our program is going to look like. And then on top of that, I think it is because they have a clear picture and they understand what it's supposed to look like, then it becomes compelling, where it inspires your players to give their best effort because they want to achieve that vision, So I think that leads to things like pride in being a member of the team, just pride in the membership of the team and being committed and making sacrifices and everybody, agreeing to, they all, I think when you have a good team, whether it's spoken or unspoken, that group of guys comes together and there's an agreement to action, because that you do have that culture, you do have that clear and compelling vision for those guys to follow. And I think a lot of things come from that, so what's the guy's name? Jerry Krause that you see sitting on the Gonzaga bench. He was always at Don Meyer's clinics, and he always said, you got to paint the picture and you got to sell the picture. And I believe that, when you're talking about culture, and I think you have to be an example of that too. But I would have thought, oh, it's what offense you're running. That's how you're going to win. It took me a long time to figure out that it is how you're selling it, and you better have a relationship with those kids if you're going to coach them hard and have those high expectations and have that vision for your program. If we use the word love in our program a lot, I tell our kids I love them. I tell them, I'm going to be hard on you. There are going to be days you're going to hate my guts, but whatever I'm saying is coming from a place of love. It's never personal. Don't ever take it personal. Freshmen always struggle with that. Seniors, they're like, you didn't mean it, But so I think there's a direct, culture drives performance. And what's funny is we did a study on this when I was at Centennial. I can't remember the guy's name. If I think of it, I'll email it to you. But we did a culture study, and we hit a lull there. Where we kind of had some kids that the culture in our program became, we can't wait to get practice over with so we can go over to his house and get on the Xbox, and mom's going to fix a big meal, and all that was great and everything. But so this guy has all these different types of culture: a country club culture, competitive, toxic, and I made a questionnaire out for every kid, and we discovered that the returning players said our culture is a country club culture. Guys will go just hard enough to keep the coaches off their back, and they won't compete hard enough against each other where they hurt each other's feelings. And we identified that, and we really worked hard on changing the culture. But I think because we gave our players ownership of that, and kind of said, here are the things that we need to change, and this is not going to happen unless you guys are the ones doing it. And we changed it. We felt like we went from a country club to a competitive culture in a year because I thought it was important, and we took a couple of days of practice in the spring, and that's what we talked about. It was just those types of things.
That's really good. That's really good. Would you happen to have that survey or somewhere, or know where we could get it?
I looked for that today because I was going to be really smart and show you that I actually read a book.
Look what I did.
But I couldn't find it. I think I loaned it to somebody, but I'll find it.
Okay.
But it's cool because it not only gives the different cultures, but it gives the traits of the cultures, and it has a questionnaire that comes along with it that you can get. And I changed the questionnaire, but it was pretty remarkable, the things that, because some of that stuff, man, as a coach, you get those surveys back, and boy, you kind of have to choke your pride a little bit. You're like, man, I thought we did a good job of this, and we are not doing a good job of this. And so, man, that next year, but the thing was, we had some really good leaders that year, and boy, they were tired of this. You keep coach off my back, I'll keep coach off your back. Let's just make it look good. And they didn't want that. And that was the year. Trying to think of who was seniors. I don't know, the Nolan Ritchie, Dylan Crawford, any of those kids, they were the seniors that year. But yeah, and then it changed, and those other guys like John Robbins and Jonathan Washington, those guys that played for me, they kept that culture. Because they were younger and they saw that country club stuff, and they didn't want that. So
one, I think it's really impressive that you did that, because I would imagine myself, many coaches stay away from things like that, because once you're confronted with the truth, you have to make a choice. You have to choose to do something about it or to allow it to stay the same way. And so sometimes it's easier just to have your head in the sand and not know and not confront yourself or your team with that. I'm just telling you right now, Coach, I'm going to, in the time that we're talking now to when this comes out, I need you to find it. And we'll put it in the show notes, because I think that's going to be a really fun thing. I'll take my guys through it for sure.
It was interesting, just because there were things. The thing that I was proud of the most was that everybody agreed that the expectations and kind of the discipline and everything was very. It was laid out. Everybody knew what was going to happen. But the things that there were two or three things that I can remember. I don't think Nick was there. We did that. Nick would have punched a wall. But I remember when I read it, I was like, this is crap. We work on this, we do this, I'll show you. And then, but then you get to, you kind of let that pass, and you're like, well, I'm not doing a good job at it. Apparently, yeah. I mean, if I'm sitting here saying that we're not just giving it lip service, then I'm teaching it bad, or I'm not getting the message across. So yeah, it hurts your pride a little bit. But I think you're right. What's the guy that was at North Carolina that was a soccer coach that won all those championships? You know who I'm talking about?
North
Carolina or Duke.
I think it was North Carolina, and there's one. I'm putting together a book list from all the guys that I've had on, some of their top 3 books that they really loved. And one guy, there's a book about that coach. And so, yeah, I'm drawing a blank on it.
But I remember reading some of his stuff, and it was like, if you want to think about what coaching really is, you go in there every day and you have to confront every single thing that you don't want to see every day. And that's exhausting. And in his words, he was like, when I can't do that anymore, it's time to go, but that's what's I think so exhausting about coaching is they have to know, I can't let that slide. Going back to Jerry Krause, when I heard him talk, I remember he always said this every clinic. He said, you get what you accept, you get what you expect, and you get what you inspect. I remember that. I wrote that down today when I was thinking about some of these questions. But that's true.
Yeah, no, that's
it's
really
not easy to do that every day.
Mike Neighbors talked about his list of pet peeves. He gives this list of pet peeves to his players every year. These are the things that I don't like that players do. So it's your job to not do them. But they also compile a list of their pet peeves, things they don't like that coaches do. And so then it's up to him and his staff to live up to those. So like if a player says, I don't like it when practice says it's done at 4, but we don't get done until 4:30. That's hypothetically, that's a pet peeve. Then I think that's similar to this, where it's good for players to know. Like if we're going to go in, and I think to your point too about holding those standards every day and how you have to be prepared for that. I think if your players know that you go into practice doing that every day, they start to expect it. So they may actually live up to higher standards. Because like if a coach, they know that the coach doesn't care about little things, well, then they're going to let little things slide. They're going to let those things happen. And so I think you actually get to, even though it's hard and it's a lot of effort, you probably get to sidestep so many landmines throughout the season because your players know that you're walking in every day with that attitude of, hey, any slippage, I'm here, right?
Yeah, and I think you have to be careful about that. You can't turn everything into a gotcha moment.
Yes,
I feel like now I think there is a time for the gotcha culture when you walk in the first week of practice where everything's pretty loose and they're coming in and I want them to know like, hey, I'm looking for every little thing. But I think that too is a deal where it's like, hey, you guys need to show the freshmen. This is us.
Yeah.
This is not us. This is what's accepted. This is what's not accepted. And, most freshmen usually don't want to have to run for a senior or something like that.
True. A good example of that is too with the standards that we have within our offenses or defenses, basically the concepts. And instead of stopping play every time to explain a concept again and again, make them violations. And the reason I thought about this was PGC. So getting to direct with them for 5 years, we would teach them concepts in the classroom. We'd go over it on the floor. And then when we start to play games, those concepts became our violations. So instead of calling things like fouls and travels and things like that, we would call failure to demonstrate control, which that means you're leaping to pass or you're going off of 1 foot at the wrong time. I think, like to your point, not gotcha, but teaching our culture or concepts through play and putting them in positions where they can show that they've mastered them. Or, I mean, in basketball, the worst thing that can happen to you is you get called for a violation and you lose the ball. And so that's just a great way to reinforce those concepts. Because I agree with you. I'm not going into every practice like I can't wait to make you pay. I can't. No. But we hear our standards. I'm going to hold you to those. Tyler Costin, whenever we would talk about our summer sessions, he would always say, "Guys, listen, don't forget we are holding their feet to the fire." And it's like that idea of this is intense, this is real, and you're going to be held to high standards. And you nailed it with those three things. If you expect it, man, they tend to meet those expectations.
Yeah. When I was my first or second year of coaching, I think it was my second year of coaching. I was trying. I didn't know who I was as a coach. I wanted to be tough, but you're 24 years old, or 25 years old. You're not that tough, really. and so you're not a whole lot older than your players, and so every little thing on the line. And I just came out of practice one day, and I was like, God, I would hate playing for me. I just hate it. But I got, and so I'll never forget, I was sitting in my living room, the old Texas Coach magazine, and I'm thumbing through there, and there's an article by Charles Bryant when he was coaching, I believe, Hardin Jefferson. Wasn't that where he was at? Mm-hmm. Okay. So he had a system called bricks and saves, which I use to this day. And everybody's got some, where it's like, okay, I'm going to post about 5 things, and I'll leave that for 2 or 3 weeks. I may change them. 5 things that get you saves, diving on the floor for a loose ball, offensive rebound, whatever. And then, whatever you're really trying to get them to do that they're not doing very well, high hands on your closeout, communication, whatever. And so I was like, this guy is a freaking genius, because all I have to do is just keep one manager over there, which you can have that in Class A. Brick, save, brick, save, brick, save. And then you bring them up in practice. Let's pay up, boys. What is it? Well, Coach, we got more bricks than saves. Everybody on the line, and then today, and so you start doing those things, and your kids start taking ownership of that. That was an offensive rebound,
Yeah.
Hey, I dove for that ball, Now, they won't ever say the bricks, but they'll say the save.
They hope you miss those.
And then it's over, we can celebrate, Hey, we had 10 more saves and bricks today. Way to go, And that stopped. I stopped wasting, but also felt like it gave them something to take ownership. But there was a celebration that could occur too, instead of every little thing. Well, it doesn't matter if I've done this 5 times correct in a row. If he does it wrong, we're all going to run, So I've learned that was probably one of the few smart things I did when I was younger that I learned, but I still do that to this day. I hadn't changed it.
I think that's a great way to hold them accountable. I love that. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. When you hear 600 wins, first of all, it feels like a number that's just impossible to get to. And I'm old. and it just that's just a lot of success. But I think anybody that has been doing this for a while knows that there are a lot of losses that come with that. I mean, you're not really just having 30-win seasons every year. No. And so there are a lot of losses, and you have to learn or know how to handle that with your team and have that pulse of your team to know how to do it correctly. So how do you handle defeat with your players?
I always think about that quote Dean Smith said, if every, if the whole thing about winning and losing is going to be, about life and death, you're going to die a lot. And so I'm the world's worst. I hate to lose, but I figured it out over the years. I hate seeing my guys fail. And so when they fail, I put that totally on me. And so I take it very personal. And I remember Joe Lombard's one time, he said, I feel like coaches don't feel like they're doing a good job if they don't suffer. If they don't think they're suffering a little bit. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
This is feeling too good right now. Something's wrong.
But so I kind of came up with something in my head that I thought, there's got to be something where we take the emotion out of it and we become problem solvers and we approach it as, what happened the other night is a problem to be solved. And we have to, and all of us spend our entire season doing this, but we have to eliminate all the things that cause us to lose. You're doing that all the time, but you're really getting focused on. So especially when we get in the district of the playoffs, I'm like, look, there's three parts to this. There's the planning part. That's my part. I watch the film, come up with a game plan. I plan for us to be successful. And then there's the preparation part. That's our part together. Everybody's got to take ownership. This is where you demonstrate that you understand the plan, and I reinforce what we plan, but we have to do that part together. And then the last part is the execution part. That's your time. And so, so we can go back and there's times where I'll tell the team my plan was awful. I thought, I'll take it for example in the regional semifinals. I had 10 statted films on Huckabee, and we had a kid that was shooting 25% from the 3-point line, and that sucker lit us up. And he shot much better than 25%. And I told the kids, man, I'm like, we can live with what he makes. Well, crap, he was a difference in the game. So I'm not above saying, hey, my plan was bad. I shouldn't have done this, but more often than not, it's, our preparation was bad, which led to bad execution. But I think you take the emotion out and you come up with about the 2 or 3 things that you did awful. And then you're like, here's where we're at. And then I think, kind of hold their feet to the fire on it. And then you have things that are measurable where it's like, all right, we've had 3 practices in a row. And one of our things to get bricks for is all 5 not boxing out. And we're still having this problem a week later. Nobody's taking ownership of this. But I also feel like when we don't watch film for very long. I just don't think you can hold kids. I used to when we did, but it was probably dumb back then too. But I'll make 6 clips of what we did wrong, these are things that cause us to lose. And then we go out, and I think that gives them a chance to take ownership of it. Sometimes they don't, but I try to take the emotion out. It's just like, we got a problem to solve. We're all problem solvers. We all are in this together. We got to solve this problem together.
I've gone back and forth on the film thing, and I don't know. I don't know where I was. Even to this moment, I don't know where I stand, because I've been the guy where 3 stretches or improvements that we need to make, and then 3 celebrations or good things that we've done, and a lot of times, like, areas we need to improve. This is exactly what we're talking about. Keep doing it. But then I was at TABC, and Grant McCaslin was talking, and he talked about how on Saturdays he would bring players in, he'd bring them food, and they'd sit and watch the whole game together. And he said he had all the guys in there because he wanted all of them to hear him coach and teach everybody. So it's not like just the best players are in there and you're spending time with them. It's like the bench is also doing that. And you're here, so like this last year, I think I probably watched film too much, because it all depends on how you handle it. When I'm seeing us do things that either we've discussed, we've practiced, I feel like I can hold them accountable for. When I feel like when I see them do it wrong, I feel my blood just start to boil. And then all of a sudden it is one of those film sessions that, like, as a positive coach, like a guy that I want to be a positive coach, it's really negative. But then if I stick to the 3x3, then like you said before, I think I'm more likely to keep the emotion out. But I don't know, maybe that's something too to ask players. How do you feel like you benefit from film the most? Do you like short clips, or do you want to sit down with some donuts and kolaches and over breakfast and just kind of hash this whole thing out? I don't know.
Is when I don't know. I consider myself to be defensive minded. And so the first part of the film, especially now with Huddle, where you can filter all your defensive clips, that's what I watch first. And I use the little draw thing that you can use on Huddle. And it's funny that you say that, because the longer I watch it, the comments just get more sarcastic.
Well, that's not what we talked about, is it?
Yeah. I remember one time when we were running the Amoeba, and it was my first year here, and the one kid that's supposed to be a hoop is outside the lane opposite the ball. And I've circled him like 10 times. And finally I circled the ball rack. And I'm like, you've been guarding that ball rack the entire first half. And then you're like, that was kind of cruel. But a couple things on that. Coach Broadhurst's son was what's the guy? A&M.
Buzz Williams.
He was Buzz Williams' grad assistant when he was at Marquette. And he said that Buzz would tell him, I want 4 clips offensively of what they do. 4 clips. That was it. And he was like, and he was like, are you sure? He's like, that's all they're going to remember. I want the 4 most important things.
Yeah.
And then I was talking to I was talking to Coach Peeler at Highland Park, and he came and actually did a shooting clinic with our kids last summer.
That's awesome.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And we were talking about film, and I thought this was a great idea. Once he kind of shows them how he watches film and what to look for, and he kind of gets them a little trained, then he will go in there and be like, all right, you 2 guys get your laptop. I want you to watch the first 10 possessions of the first quarter. You 2 guys get your laptop. I want you to watch the first 10 offensive possessions. And he'll just divide them up. And then and he'll be like, I'll leave the room, or whatever. And they go. He said, I'll come back in 20, 30 minutes later. All right, what do you got? What do you got? He said, it's amazing how they become coaches and how they are really, it's like they're saying the exact same things I would be saying.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of taught them to look for those things. And so he'll be like, all right, group 1, right? 3 things that we did well, three things we got to get better at. And then when it's all over, he's got a whole board full of stuff, and he'll go in, well, you 2 guys have that in common. You both said that. Y'all had that. He said you come up with about 5 things. Well, it looks like that's what we need to hit Monday.
There's practice.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I think that's great. And the kids are doing it, and there's ownership in it.
Yeah.
And he said they enjoyed it. So when I was at Mumford, I did that. And I thought the kids really liked it. And I just remembered that. I should have done that more this year.
And I think too, especially when you set up a culture of trust, accountability, guys openly are able to communicate, they're bringing energy and spirit. I feel like a film session like that, it's like the next step. Like it's kind of a light bulb moment just in our talk is why haven't I been doing that before? Because I am very much against spoon feeding players and like even organization. You have 15 seconds to get in 3 groups of 3, whatever you're playing. Like I don't create the teams. I don't do this or that. Occasionally if we're scrimmaging, I might want to see different groups against each other, but so I do that in all the other areas.
Yeah.
But then in film, I'm running the whole show. You sit there, be quiet, and just sit back. And so that's a good nugget. I appreciate you sharing that.
The thing about film with me is I despise watching film of my own team. I hate it. I don't enjoy it. I just don't like it. I love watching other people's films.
Huh. I think I'm the opposite.
Really, when I get into district, man, I love watching other teams play and kind of what we're going to do against them. But
yeah.
I have to. I bought a desk in my house that raises so I can stand, because and my wife's the one that suggested it, because she's like, I know when what you're watching is bad because you watch about 3 minutes and you start pacing, and then you go back and you start pacing. And I have found that, like, when I'm standing, I don't get as mad. Don't ask me why.
That's good.
But I don't like watching film myself. Or our team. I don't know why. I have to make myself do it. And like Joe Lombard, when he would go home, if I need to call him or something, I knew, I'm like, he's watching film right now, having a blast. Him and Babs, his wife, are sitting there. They're just having the greatest time in the world. And and Sunday is like, well, I gotta watch film. So,
what would you do differently if you could start over in coaching?
I think I would have started my career placing a premium on relationships over X's and O's. You're going to get that over time. You're going to figure out what you like, but I think that's the first thing. I also think I would have wished I'd have learned earlier that it's not what you teach, it's what you emphasize. You always you hear coaches talk about, they should just know that. No, they shouldn't just know that. If you don't do that every day in practice, that's your fault. And I'm guilty of that, whenever we're not doing something well, that's the first thing I ask myself, because I can tell you, I can go back and show you where we're doing this every day, but I place no value on it. I don't emphasize it. I'm just giving it lip service. I've got to show that that's important. I think that's another thing, that it's not what you teach, it's what you emphasize. I wish I'd have known that. And I think just, I'm not one of these guys. I feel like sometimes I say too much in practice. I need to shut up. But I at some point I learned standing in close proximity to the drill is not coaching. You got to teach. And I just think when you're in there, you got to teach. And you better have good practices. You better have good practices. And then I think just keeping it simple. I can muck it up, man. I can muck it up with the best of them. And that's advice for myself now. I think the simpler you keep it, the better it usually turns out. I know there's a handout I had one time. I don't remember who it was from. It was a lot like the question was, what do you wish an older coach would have told you when you were younger? That reminded me of that.
Man, a big nugget that you said earlier, and I kind of glazed past it, and I didn't want to, was asking that question, would you want to play for yourself?
Yeah.
There's been times at Faith when we're running and gunning and free-flowing offense, giving great effort. The bench is cheering. I'm up cheering like, man, heck yeah, I would. That'd be a lot of fun. And then there are some games where I'm watching film and I hear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I hear the tone. I hear, if I was a fan or a parent of the opposing team, I would think, golly, what's wrong with that guy? Like, that's not, and there's a lot of shame in those moments that I can't get back. But like, I really appreciate those reminders that you just gave, because,
anytime you've said any time, I think the post-game speech, it should be about a minute long, whether you won or lost, because I can't think of one single time that I ever went in after a game and just exploded, that anything positive was said, anything, or forget positive, just constructive. You're emotional, they're emotional. And sometimes it's just, let's get dressed and get out of here. I think that's sometimes the best thing you can say,
Yep. Tyler Costin on his episode, man, it was almost 2 years ago now, which is nuts, but he talked about doing away with post-game talks altogether. He says, huddle up right on the floor, say, thank you. I loved watching you play, whatever you say, and let them go eat pizza. Let them be with their friends. And he said, because you're right on the money, win or loss in that moment. Yep. They're done. They don't want to hear anything. Yeah. And so what I've started to do is as soon win or lose, especially at home, we just meet right at half court. They already have assigned things that per grade to break down the gym. And so they know to do that, but I just bring them together
that's a great idea.
And with everybody standing there watching us, it really holds me accountable to that short talk, smiling, hugging, and all this stuff, because I can't light them up right there, Coach. I can't. Not in front of Grandma and Grandpa, but I don't really want to do that anyway. So that's been a helpful thing for me. But yeah, I think you're right on the money with that.
It's insane too, because you can go. I can remember after a loss one time going in there and you're looking at their faces. And you're like, he's not suffering enough. He start playing that game. He doesn't look angry enough, and it's crazy.
I had an AD remind me that we're the weird ones.
Yeah,
they're not, and to expect them to be as weird as us and to care as much as us.
That's a good point.
We just want them to care the appropriate amount that a high school kid that has the rest of his life ahead of them, especially the majority of them that don't want to play after high school. We just want them to care an appropriate amount. And I think that's where culture, again, I'm kind of with a lot of those. Coach Fitch from Birdville, long time coach. I asked him the culture question. He said, man, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't even use that word. We just never even talked about it. But everybody, my high school coach had a culture. It was respect the game. He didn't say that's what it was. We just knew it. But now, I mean, it's not a bad thing that word is used, and it's way more out there and everything. I think it highlights the fact that it's necessary, and we need to be conscious of what direction, because we all have one, what direction it's going. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. Coach, the speed round. Right. A lot of guys have played for you, worked with you, but after the speed round, we're really going to know who you are.
Okay.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Pralines and cream.
Nice. Greatest shooter of all time?
Bryant Rucker, Frisco Centennial.
Wow, I remember that name.
Yeah, he was a stud.
I remember that.
Played at the University of Denver. He was
nice.
Only D1 player I ever coached.
Wow.
Yeah.
Texting or talking?
I would have said talking, but now I think texting actually takes less time. I used to think that was crazy.
Good job, Coach. Way to come around on that. That's growth,
you're lucky
man.
I was even able to get into this Zoom meeting.
Coach, I'm telling you, you wouldn't be the first. I've had some guys that they have people kind of set it up for them.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, so today I figured out I've never used the camera on this thing, and it won't work. It's just black. And so I'm messing with this thing for 30 minutes. And I finally figured out there was a plastic strip over it. I needed to peel off. So,
Coach, we're getting real now. Full transparency on the Jamodi podcast. That's awesome. Greatest basketball movie of all time?
Ooh, Hoosiers.
Yeah. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
A lot of people think I would love to have a shot clock, because I think the point zone would be perfect for them.
Oh,
I think a lot of people,
they wouldn't be able to score. But
But I can also on the small school side, that's a big challenge for small schools. But I would love a shot clock.
I've heard it. Somebody say, would you rather have a 3-person officiating crew or a 2-person with the third one running the shot clock? I think I'd want the 2 and the third on the shot clock.
I think that's a good idea. Now the problem with out here in rural America, where
you only get 2.
As well, we just have half a G out here. We can't hardly even get officials out here.
But, man,
yeah, you know, the old Paris chapter, I don't think they could have enough guys to cover that.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
You're up 3 on defense with 7 seconds left. Do you foul or no foul?
We're just going to play.
If they make it overtime, let's go, fellas. Yeah. I think I lean that way. A lot of people say foul.
I said that in a playoff game one year, and we fouled the kid on the shot, on 3-point shot.
Yeah.
Luckily he missed the free throw, but we still got beat in overtime.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I'm gun shy because of that, I think.
Yeah. What book would you give someone?
Any kid that I've ever had that's gone into coaching and wanted to coach basketball, I've always given them as a present Morgan Wooten's book, Coaching Basketball Successfully. I think that's a great. You want to talk? He talks about how to run a program in that book, and it's a good, easy read. And then another one is the blue and gold wooden book. What's that one? Woodenism. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And then there's another book that I like to give kids that are going into coaching. It's called Why We Win. You ever seen that book?
Mm-mm.
And it's and they interviewed Red Auerbach, John Wooden, Eris Parsagan, Ansa Durant. That's that guy's name.
Nice.
From the soccer coach. Bobby Knight, Joe Gibbs, Pat Summitt,
wow.
Chuck Noll, Dean Smith, Joe Paterno, Lenny Wilkins, Bill Walsh, Dan Gable.
I can't believe I've never heard of that book with all those
Anderson,
people.
Mike Krzyzewski, and Tommy Lasorda. And basically they just go through and they ask these guys pretty much all the same questions, and you get to hear each one of them how they answer it, and it's amazing because there's some guys here that are on different ends of the spectrum, but there is a thread of commonness that goes through every one of those. It's a great read.
I'm excited about that. That'll be good.
Yeah, it's Billy Packer wrote it. Yeah, but that's a great read.
Coach, I got 3 more here. Favorite place to travel?
I like to travel. My wife and I have been overseas before.
Nice.
I would like to do that, but it's so freaking expensive.
Yeah. Where's your favorite place to go overseas?
Denmark.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, great. Belgium was really nice, but people there didn't really like Americans very much. but you know, just I like just a lot of these, you know, Texas places. We went to Jefferson, Texas the other day, and that's a neat little town. So I just like to get out.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
1 in the morning at my house, then I'll have 1 when I get to school. And I usually don't finish that one. I'm just sitting around talking to people.
Yeah. Last question. In basketball, who is the GOAT?
You know, I don't know why, but I just have always been a Dean Smith fan.
Coaching, okay, but what about playing?
Oh, playing. Larry Bird.
Nice.
Well, it's probably Jordan.
Yeah, but I mean, it's your list. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a big Celtics fan in the 80s. Yeah. And then I was a Jordan fan. I obviously recognize how great he was, but I always rooted against when they were in that big stretch when Bird was coaching the Pacers, you know, when
those Pacers teams were good.
Yeah, but I think Jordan's probably the greatest of all time.
And Dean Smith as the coach, that's what you would put?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I can remember as a kid, it just seemed like every time, you know, when I was a 9 or 10-year-old kid watching the NCAA championship on my little black and white TV in my room, watching the Tar Heels, there was just something about North Carolina. I've always been a big North Carolina fan. I've always been a big Dean Smith fan. First coaching book I ever bought was multiple offense and defense by Dean Smith. So
yeah. Coach, this was awesome, man. Like, I'm telling you, I really enjoyed getting to learn more just about you and your coaching philosophy and some of the stops that you've been. And just want to also thank you for just 33 years of just faithful service to so many kids. And then also what you've done for basketball and coaching. Just really appreciate you, man.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it. Thanks for asking me. It was an honor.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.